Hi, everybody. Welcome to the AI Diaries. I have a good friend of mine here. Jerry Ellis is the head of the contact center for Ardent Health. Welcome, Jerry.
Hey, glad to be here. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I always enjoy our time together. I'm excited to talk to you because you're in healthcare, which is a very highly regulated industry, historically can sometimes be slow to innovate. And it's an industry that we all have experience with, whether professionally or personally. So, that being said, I always like to start off with, across your career, seeing trends of any type, especially technology trends. Has there been any patterns that you see that you're seeing again with AI? So anytime a new tech comes in, and as far as adoption and sentiment, are you seeing any of the same trends or the same mistakes with AI?
That's a great question. I'm going to look over my shoulder metaphorically because AI is coming for us, right? So we know that, but I find that it's really similar to any technology over the last 10, 20 years or whatever that has come about. You have those early adopters, they just jump in. Then you have those that are just following the coattails of those early adopters, and then some that are just very late to the game, right? They wish they would have jumped in, sooner than they did. And if you want to ask me personally, I'm more on that. Let people jump in. We all know that we need to leverage AI, and it's being leveraged in a very effective ways as we sit and talk right now, right? So it's really a matter of just understanding what are your tasks, what are your gaps, and breaking it down. There's much more than just me and a contact center guy saying, "Hey, bring on AI." I got to really look at it from a collaborative standpoint. Are we ready from a server standpoint? From a governance
Yeah.
standpoint, or how can we leverage this across different groups? So it's much more than just contact centers. So there's a lot to bite on that, but I do believe that from an AI perspective, if you're not ready to get in that game right now, you will be behind.
Yeah, yeah. And you brought up an interesting point because a lot of times when we talk about CX, people may think of the customer service or the contact center department only, but you made a good point of it's so much more than the contact center. It's governance, it's who has buy-in, who's making the decision, and how are they impacted by the decision. In your experience, what do you think is a missing piece, or what is an unexpected part of an organization that should be involved in the conversation that sometimes is not?
Well, I think well, a couple things. As far as just blocking and tackling, again, what are you trying to solve for? Sometimes people will jump in to grab AI just for the sake of we need to have AI, which is true, but it's a matter of your approach, right? And then recognizing what's the best partner, who you should be working with. But having said that, once you identify that, which some people are quick to jump over that or maybe try to do it concurrently, it really is understanding the company and understanding that you can solve for more if you are collaborative and bring all the right partners in across from IT and marketing, HR and so on, and just approach this maybe once versus that way you can avoid some rework and some extra costs and inefficiencies that will pop up later if you don't include everyone. Because again, we all know more brains the better, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're exactly right. And it's such a big purchase that if you don't have everybody bought in from the get-go, there's inevitably going to be bumps along the way, or someone's going to be like, why didn't you consider our opinion, or why didn't you consider this before purchasing? So those are all really great points.
Yeah, another challenge is an age-old challenge, right? When you invest in any capital, is how do you sell this to the C-suite?
Yeah.
Where's the ROI on this, and does it match or is it parallel ROI with other people within the company? Their priorities may not be your priorities. So there's certainly it's not a new discussion, but it's a new discussion in terms of AI and what does that look like, especially as you read some white papers and you see some use business cases that the ROI doesn't seem to be there right away.
Yeah. Yeah. And you made a great point selling it internally. For healthcare and CX as a whole, where do you see potentially the quickest ROI or the most impactful ROI when it comes to AI?
So for me, I'm going to give you my opinion, and we all know what that may be worth, right? So it's something that I'm jealous. So many of my network peers already have this going, and it's almost an afterthought. But we have yet to implement the quality QA AI automation. Right, we're still doing it the old tried and true fashion of a certain small sample size. So that's one I'm announcing to the world. We're not there yet, but I would love to at least get that into place. That's a no-brainer. And then from there, learning management system or knowledge base, right? How can we make it easier, especially with more and more information as we acquire, as we build de novos and things like that? How can and we start cross-training and handling cross-market support within our contact center? How can we make it easier for our scheduling reps and our support reps to manage all of that? So I would love to get AI-driven agent assist in place as well. So those are a couple quick items that
Yeah.
looking at just from a contact center perspective. But if I branch out beyond the contact center, it's interesting because we've started using, I won't say the brand or the company name, but we start using things that will help transcribe for our providers or doctors. So then staying up till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, trying to get all the records for the day, now they can transcribe. AI will take care of that for them. It's been wonderfully well received.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of things that within healthcare that AI is going to make a tremendous difference, even in diagnosis and looking at x-rays and things like that. But I need to get
Wow.
back to where my expertise is and back to the call center.
No, but I think myself being somebody who's in CX, you're in contact center and CX, sometimes, we do get at least focused vision in that. However, I use AI, even on a daily basis. So when you think about the larger connotations of it and something as serious and impactful as helping diagnose a patient, I mean, that's profound. And then of course, the adding a great experience, cherry on top sort of thing, and also making agents' lives easier because the happier and more efficient and successful agents are, patient experience always benefits from that.
That's an excellent point there, Kate, because again, sometimes there's that fear of I'm going to be out of a job, right? When you look specifically at a contact center, a phone agent, email support, cross-market support, omni-channel, if you will. So it's important to bring the representatives along that journey as well, so they understand how AI is going to augment them and help them out.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the other way around. And so they're there to make AI better, and it's there to help their
Yes.
job easier. So that understanding that exposure, understanding that there will be some efficiency gains, of course. There will be some things that you can reallocate those resources to more of those complex type calls and so on. But I think it's important to bring your team in on the front end so they can understand what we're really trying to accomplish and be as transparent as possible, knowing that there will be some efficiency gains, and you make
Yeah.
decisions that are best for the company around that, of course. But that to me
Yeah.
is sometimes is, hey, here's some AI, let's go.
Yeah. And you brought up a great point because I think, especially with what we hear on the news and even some brands that have jumped the gun and, fired a bunch of staff in place of AI, I think the elephant in the room when agents hear we're getting AI is, am I going to be out of a job? And by addressing that early and not only saying, first of all, no, things will change. Here's what that change will look like, but also help me help you and let's figure this out together. So I would say a follow-up question to that is, what would that look like for somebody who's like, I want my agents to have input, I want their buy-in, I want them to come on this journey? What are some pointers or even a place to start to make that happen?
Well, I think it goes back to that blocking and tackling I touched on. If you include your team, the ones that are actually doing the work, handling that correspondence, the digital information coming at them, or the phone call, if you will. If you bring them in, what is it that they wish they could have help on? What are some of the things that are repetitive, of course? What are some of the things they are challenged with? Because if you start there, then again, you can make sure you have all the information that is needed, right, that you can trust, and you can make sure that you truly are solving for the things depending on the call types, what's the most repetitive transaction that's happening. But they are the ones that know. I can think I know, and maybe more times than not, I'm correct, or at least in the ballpark, right? But they truly know what the headaches are. And then they'll bring in some other things as far as patient satisfaction and some of the, whether it's NPS, CSAT, CES, whatever it is you want to record that patient satisfaction or customer satisfaction, they'll help bring to light those type of things that sometimes gets pushed out to the side or forgotten as you're trying to launch this AI technology solution. But
Yeah.
they like help keep you honest by bringing them in and just starting from the grassroots, if you will.
Yeah. And that's a great way to kickstart adoption because when somebody feels like they've been part of a decision, they feel more obligated to make it successful and make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, another question that I was thinking of, and you and I kind of touched on earlier when we were just chatting, is where do you think, as far as conversations and demos and education goes, where do you feel like either yourself or people are least informed? Or if I reword that, what do you think we're not talking enough about or educating enough about when it comes to AI in CX in the contact center?
It may just be my view. I think there could be more education around the true what are the advantages, what does that ROI really look like. We all sit in on demos, or we've decided to sign a contract and partner with a vendor, or as I like to say, your new partner, and yet you don't, sometimes in these demos you don't really see, you see the use case, not sure you get a true concrete examples of what that ROI really is for you, right? Some will provide references, which is great. Others will just say, hey, we can get this up and running for you in X amount of time. And sometimes they don't even ask, what is it you're trying to solve for? So,
Oh, wow.
which is somewhat of a giveaway, right? If they don't really want to understand your business environment, how can they present a tool, a solution for you? So
Yeah.
I think that's part of it anyway, in terms of when I look at demos and try to understand what is that true ROI, what are some hard numbers, and they can say 7% decrease in volume because these repetitive transactions. I get all that, but I don't know that it tells the whole
Yeah.
story. You're right back to that patient
Yeah.
satisfaction and so on.
Yeah. So it's almost like in order to even have a successful demo or presentation, you need to at least get an understanding of what somebody is trying to solve. Because just because you have a demo that shows healthcare doesn't mean you're going to have a demo that addresses, XYZ healthcare companies exact problem. And so instead of trying to just throw darts at a board and being like, does this resonate? Does this resonate? Does this resonate?
Mhm.
It's like come into it and say, hey, we understand your business enough to give you a high level taste. Now let's dig in more.
Yeah, and it goes back to understanding really what you want to solve for, or what the company can benefit from. It may be great for the contact center team, but again, what about revenue cycle management? And you can just pick your
Yeah.
departments. And what about the sales team? In our case, we don't have an upsell, right, in terms of revenue, things like that. But obviously, that's pretty prominent throughout most industries. So you're really connecting all the dots and trying to approach this in a way that's meaningful for everyone instead of
Yeah.
just doing that silo or in a vacuum.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And similar to what we've been talking about as far as full organization buy-in and being informed, a lot of leaders are just getting the directive right now, go buy AI. Or somebody made a point, hey, my one of my 2026 goals was to start an AI pilot. And he said, but I could, if that's my goal, I can start an AI pilot anywhere. Does it even have to be successful? No. So how do you think that leaders should be advising, their company, their other leaders to look at AI? And for a leader that gets the directive of go buy AI, what do you think, in your opinion, should be the first step for them if they're not going to get the direction of, hey, go get AI to drop average handle time? How would they go about getting that vague directive?
A little repetitive here, but again, you have to, some of that is the education process, right? You have to understand what gaps you're trying to solve for and what do you define as successful? What does that really look like? And so if someone would just hand to me and say, let's get AI, an AI solution in place by Q3 or Q2 or whatever, you just have to have those constructive conversations, or it's probably not going to end the way that everyone thinks in their mind it's going to end, right? It could be a little abstract. So you just have to have those constructive, critical conversations and just lay it out. And again, the more in
Yeah.
that party, if you will, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. For
Which
healthcare, yeah, go ahead.
Which I can say, which brings us back to what we've said, right? Is sometimes people are quick. We have to have AI, and I agree, we all do. But sometimes speed overtakes being methodical, being
Yeah.
clear on what you really want to accomplish with that tool.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, yes, we all want AI. We want it tomorrow. The board wants it yesterday, but it's better to take your time and strategize, look at things end to end, because what's overlooked a lot is not only how is this going to help us and what's the ROI, but what do we need to address first for this to work? Are there gaps? Is there
Yeah.
knowledge, dispersed
Hmm.
across in different SharePoints and different, do we have broken workflows? We don't, you don't always know those things unless you take the time to map that out.
Yeah, that's right. And even when you look at, we have about 15 months ago, we implemented a major CCaaS platform. I'll just say it that way. And so we have yet to really dive in to truly tap in what are the AI solutions that it can provide for us, and is it good enough, right? Do we need to bolt on an outside potential third-party partner? So we haven't quite got to that point yet ourselves. So there's a lot in terms of evaluation, and you do need to look at your current processes, as we touched on, garbage in, garbage out type of thing. But you also need to look at what current technology do you have, and then it goes back again to making sure everyone's invited to the party, because the IT
Yeah.
team may say, we can't do that, or there's going to be some latency issues, or something you're not even thinking about, right? Or some security issues or whatever. So again, it's just interesting in terms of what you have to evaluate. And for us, again, healthcare tends to move a little slower than some other industries. So we have a tool, that CCaaS platform, that we really have to evaluate thoroughly to understand what it can do for us, and is that good enough, and then take it from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. So in a highly regulated industry like this, where do you think is somewhere that you wouldn't even begin to think of putting AI, at least as it is today? There's many places it can help, but maybe where a retail brand could leverage AI, where in healthcare is that where you're like, nope, no, let's not even, it's too risky, it's too regulated to trust a tool like AI right now.
Well, to me, I think you're fairly, again, you have to examine this. You're fairly safe starting with the QA, AI automation, because you talk about compliance. And one thing, of course, from a HIPAA standpoint, absolutely non-negotiable. We need to adhere to that. And so just having more complete visibility on how often does that really happen, where we may not follow the exact HIPAA requirements on a call or an interaction. Right now, again, we got a very small, statistically non-valid sample size, right? So when you think about that, I look at it kind of flipped upside down. The more exposure we have to see where our opportunity is, how often are we out
Yeah.
of compliance, would go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. So another question I have is, you have industry peers or you have, CX peers, contact center peers, and some are in your industry, some are not. Do you hear that people are feeling pressure to go out and get AI? Or I know that leadership will sometimes be like, okay, go figure out AI, but are leaders that are maybe not having the freedom to implement AI, are they like, come on, we need to get it because other CX and other contact centers are getting it?
Yeah, you might be able to hear my heart beating from the blood pressure in terms. Yes, I think there is that self-induced pressure, if you will, for me anyway. But I think there is that pressure. You touched on this, the shareholders, the boardroom, whatever. There's certainly, they just hear AI and you got to do it.
Yeah.
And again, we do. But yeah, I think there is some self-imposed pressure on that. And if it's not self-imposed, I'll just say imposed pressure on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so again, I feel a little bit of stress in terms of why are we not at this certain
Yeah.
point yet myself.
Do you feel comfortable with me asking what needs to be, or how does a company need to be aligned in order to implement AI or even approach it? Because and this is going to be not in any
Yeah,
recording,
gotcha.
but just because you're not the only leader I've talked to that's like, we need AI and we're talking about AI, but either they're not allocating budget or they don't see the ROI from it or the priority. Is there a way to touch on that high level?
I think what you just said was how I would respond to that as a prioritization. And so
Yeah,
there could be either a difference of thought in terms of what is a priority. And some of the things we're
yeah,
doing by default is getting us ready for AI. Um,
yeah,
so go ahead and ask that question.
yeah,
And if I butcher it or maybe it's politically incorrect or whatever, you can decide what to do with it.
yeah. Okay. So I'll say for organizations that are talking about AI, CX leaders want to implement it, leadership, board members want it. Where's the disconnect? Like what needs to happen for this to, okay, does that work? Something like
Yep.
that? Okay.
Yep.
So what I hear a lot of is inside of an organization, especially larger organizations, you got the CX and contact center leader who wants to approach AI. They want to experiment with AI. You have the, top level leaders or board members, they want AI, but for some reason it's just not happening. There's a disconnect. What do you think needs to happen or change, or what are they missing to actually execute and move forward?
Great question. I think a couple things come into play there. First of all, there's always that opportunity for me and my peers to educate and manage up and manage to really provide that ROI, as we've talked about, to really provide what are you going to get for it and why is this a priority over others. I think for where I'm at right now, I think it's a prioritization. There's a lot of important competing priorities that have to come into play, and some of these dovetail very nicely. They should be done before you roll out an AI solution tool. So in some ways, it works out very well. But I think it's really competing priorities. If you're to ask me in terms of when would you want to tackle that AI solution, it could be some cross market. It could be like I mentioned. It could be some acquisitions that just have to happen. You have to get those buttoned down before you introduce AI solutions around your markets or cross markets. So I think the prioritization is probably in one word is what I think is the
Yeah.
is what people decide what is more important than the other. I believe AI is waiting there for us. So sometimes you may unintentionally just keep that on the back burner
Yeah.
as you keep handling these priorities that never stop coming. I think that could be part of it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So it's almost like, and another part you touched on, and it made me think of, okay, so it's not just top leadership and CX and contact center that need to be aligned. You also need to have operations and even IT. They all need to have this priority on their 2026, 2027 list, because what happens when everybody's moving and then IT's like, we have like 10 other projects we're working on. We didn't factor this in. And then it's like, okay, well, now we got to push it off even longer. So it really needs to be everybody. Anyone who's going to touch it or be affected by it needs to make sure it's on their list and be aligned totally
Yeah,
in order for it to work.
yeah, and some of it is just education that has to flow my way for me to understand better what someone else's walk a mile in their shoes is like, right? So it could be something I think is fairly simple. It could be an API connection or whatever, and yet you
Yeah.
find out from IT what are the resources they have available to get that API, set
Yeah.
up properly, and what are their priorities. So again, it just goes back to having the more people in the room, the better, because sometimes it's very legitimate. They may not simply be ready to bring on what I think is a slam dunk. And so again, a
Yeah.
lot of it is me keeping open-minded and understanding where the opportunities are to, for me to be better educated on
Yeah.
on how we bring this all together.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I think you're doing a great job by educating other, because it's not everybody's job or passion to know about AI.
Hmm.
A lot of us play around in it, so we already kind of know how it is. But I've talked to other executives who haven't even tried ChatGPT, and I'm not saying ChatGPT is the be all end all, but there's, it gives you a little bit of a taste of the power of AI for those who are outside of the industry. Here's another question for you. You've been in the cycles of technology, you've been in contact centers when new tech has rolled out. What
Hmm.
feels different about AI than maybe like a CCAS or something in the past?
Good question. I think what comes to mind immediately is that sense of urgency. So if you know you want to go from a premise-based to a cloud-based CCaaS solution, right? You just work through that, and you know you're going to do it. You see AI, flying by you, just it keeps coming at you, and you do hear success stories in other markets or across peers, and you see what the art of the possible is. So I think just that sense of urgency and back to that pressure you talk about, I think that's what makes it a little different. And AI and what the capabilities, it's changing, by the day, it seems. And so it just gives you that sense of urgency I talked about you just need to, really move quickly, understand what you want to accomplish, as I talked about. But you just get that sense as it's looming, it's right there, and you
Yeah.
can't get away from it. Whereas before, those IT projects and things like that was under your timeline. This seems like we're
Yeah.
under AI's timeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like the way you put that. And it's changing so quickly. So what worked and what was attractive yesterday is different than what works today and is different than the next thing they're going to highlight at the next large conference.
Which, if you think about it, is a good argument for not being an early adopter, right?
I know. There's both sides.
There
There's
is.
both sides. And so I want that is a great segue into, I talk a lot about proof of concepts or pilots with people. And I believe now more than ever with any technology, there needs to be you need a taste of what you're going to get, or at least especially when it comes to top leadership getting their buy-in is, okay, we have this concept, we have this idea, we think it's going to work, but let's put it in an environment and let it work. And if we see the ROI, great, let's scale it. But what happens if you purchase that and then you don't see the ROI and it's like, dang it, now we're in 3 years when I wish we had tried it out for 6 months first.
Yeah, the great thing, the positive thing about what you just said is that I see more and more potential partners out there offering that POV, right? And they say, try us out and see for yourself. And I think that's wonderful. I think it's required at this point in
Yeah,
time, but at least it gives a sense of more of an outcome-based partnership, and it does help sell that a little bit more so. Now, it still requires, even a proof of value still requires some work from a
yeah.
collaborative team internally to get prepared for it, and you still have to make sure you check all the boxes. But I think that's almost non-negotiable anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and you made a good point. I believe if somebody does not agree to a proof of concept or a pilot, that's a little concerning to me because this is such a new technology. It's so new that if you believe in the power of your tech and your product, if it were me, I'd be like, yeah, please try it because you're going to love it and it's going to work and we're going to scale it. So I think if
So,
somebody is hesitant to do that, especially when their potential customer is investing this much money, I definitely see that as green flags for vendors. Absolutely.
I agree, and it also opens up and facilitates that conversation about the potential vendor or partner truly understanding what we need them to solve for, and they're going to be more invested right in terms of making sure it works and asking all the right questions and bringing in their best practices that perhaps we don't may not ask about. So it's just a win-win
Yeah.
with that approach.
Yeah. And here's another question for you that you made me think of earlier is, so say you're looking at a vendor demo and you're vetting a new tool and they will allow you to talk to references because I think that that's another important part. Hey, let me talk to another healthcare company. I want to get their honest feedback. How do they feel about it? What are the top 2 or 3 questions that you would ask that referral?
You know, uh, that's limited to 2 or 3. It can be tough, but certainly
Well, I mean,
uh,
name as many as you want. I didn't want to be like, name your top 8 to 10 questions. What would you
top
want to
the
know?
top 10 list. Here we are.
Yeah.
You certainly want to understand how good of a partner they are to work with. Are they responsive? Are they providing everything that they said they would? So the credibility of that partner, but also the how easy was the implementation, right? And are they delivering on what they said? That's just a starting point. But I think you'd like to understand: are they true partners? Are they asking? do they continue to invest in your company, and asking how they can bring more value, right? And exploring ways, not just, okay, the sale, the partnership's done, the contract signed, and they'll support you, but that's where it stops. Are they continuing to invest in you and see where you want to go, and make a joint effort in terms of adding more value, not just what they, pardon the expression, sold you on, but in terms of understanding how they can move your company along. They benefit, of course, from that too, but just having that true partnership, that sometimes we say that from a cliche standpoint, but you don't often get that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you want them invested in your success, because your success means their success. It means another success story they can share, and another referral
Well,
or recommendation.
right, which were the outcome based versus usage based and things like that. And hybrids work too, I know, but that's why
Yeah.
things like that are important.
Let's see. Do you want to do is this question relevant? I mean, it's kind of similar to what we've talked about, but about the mergers and acquisitions. If a company is integrating systems and teams, should they even be touching AI yet? Or is that's kind of similar to what we've already been talking about?
If you want to ask it, you can. My quick answer would be, again, before you let AI be the leading solution for you, you need to understand it with that acquisition, just like you would with your own. Where are they at from a governance standpoint? Do they have all their content? Is it updated?
Okay.
So, I mean, if that's kind of a repetition, we don't, or if you want to ask it, that's kind of how I would answer it.
Yeah. And I like that, because then we can position it this way, and you can just don't worry about it being repetitive, because sometimes things being worded differently resonates with people differently. But then also when I chop it up, it'll be great as clips. Jerry, you have experience at companies that have been through mergers and acquisitions. You've been there when it happens. You've had to deal with the implications in CX and contact centers. If the company is integrating systems and technology and teams, should they even be touching AI yet, or does that expose problems faster, or is it not even an environment where they can do that yet?
Well, my thought on that is, you touched on it about exposing problems, right? Maybe identifying broken SOPs or whatever it may be. So I would say you don't need AI to do that, right? If you really evaluate the SOPs, if you really understand their systems, that's just like if it was for your own. Forget that it's an integration or an acquisition. You need to understand what worked for them, where are the opportunities to streamline that SOP. What does the data integrity look like? You should address that first. Otherwise, it could and will be a little messy if you just say, hey, we have this great AI solution, let's plug them in. Sometimes it'd be like an electric shock after you do that. So I think you just have to be tried and true to the due diligence of how do you identify gaps, where are the opportunities, and again, there's just so much more to look at when you, especially an acquisition that may have different systems that that they have themselves. So that's my quick thought on the matter.
Yeah, no, I love the way you summed that up. Jerry, what are you looking forward to this year? Do you have anything to promote, or that, any conferences you'll be at, or anything exciting you'd like to talk about?
Gives me a second to talk selfishly, I guess.
Do it.
I love the network. If there's some, I tend to look at more local, close events versus traveling to Vegas and things like that, even though I look at that and I see some of these peers that I respect, and they just provide a wealth of information, and you're one of them, not to embarrass you, but so I always say, man, there's so many people I've not met face to face. I just need to get there for that alone and have those intimate conversations and really accelerate the learning curve and opportunities on what I don't know. So having said that, I don't have any immediate plans for that, but I am very invested in looking at all the great things that my network is doing through LinkedIn, and learning from that. I'd like to reach out privately and take that approach and just see if we could have a quick 10, 15-minute phone call about things. And I welcome anyone to reach out to me as well. Glad to be a resource and provide my my thoughts for as well on any type of talk shop matter.
Yeah. I mean, I learn so much from you whenever we meet, and you always spark new ideas for me. And the willingness and openness to meet other people and just ask those questions. I think that was another intent of this series, is to get it out there in the open, what challenges people are having, give permission to ask dumb questions, because I think with AI, sometimes we get so caught up in when everyone's talking about it, if you don't know a certain part of it, you wonder, am I supposed to know this? Like, does everyone else know this and I don't? And I'm not even talking about you or I specifically, but maybe there's people that will see this that go, okay, cool, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who hasn't experimented with it. Let me reach out to Jerry and ask him a question that maybe I wouldn't want to ask at a trade show or a conference or on a panel. So I love that.
I learned long ago no one has a one perfect answer all the time, and
I wish.
it is yes, it is helpful to bounce things off. It does create a spark, right, in terms of thoughts, a paradigm shift, or whatever it may be. So it's always good to have a conversation with curious people.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, Jerry. Is there any final thoughts that you have?
You know, I keep my tennis shoes on because we all have to keep on running, right? So
Yeah,
we all have to just keep again, as I said, be curious, look at what you want to solve for, and
yeah,
at some point in time, you have to take action. It's important to take action. You're not going to hit a home
yeah,
run. You're not going to be perfect. Take that 80-20 rule in terms of getting out there, understanding some things are non-negotiable from a compliance standpoint, governance standpoint, but you just have to take that first step and just improve as you go.
yeah. And that's a great point. You just got to start. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be like, aha, this is the moment I've been waiting for. But I think, there's a good balance of risk and also readiness. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for everything, Jerry. This was such a pleasure.
Pleasure is all mine. Appreciate it. Again, good to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks, Jerry.
You bet. Take care.
I'm going to stop the recording. And there we go. Yay, that was great. That was great. Because I've only talked to, I think, one other healthcare person as far as recording wise, and it was like